As tempting and justified as it is to embrace clown world and tune out all the world's demoralizing news with a soundtrack of laughter like the violinists on the Titanic, it's important not to overlook the other side of that arrangement. Clown world is a two-way street, so we can all laugh at them, and we should, but those in power are often laughing right back at us, and we'll see who laughs last, but they probably laughed first. I say that based on policy decisions that are so obviously unserious, there's little explanation for them other than those in power know they're a joke, and they're just daring us to do anything about it. They laugh at us because they know these aren't solutions. In fact, they're the causes of problems pushed as solutions. We're going to spend our way out of inflation with the Inflation Reduction Act, for example. We're going to promote national security by signing blank checks to overseas corruption. We're going to cultivate unity by making every story a battle over race or sex or whatever criteria of division. And we're going to imply or outright state that those who disagree with us are domestic terrorists. And even if you want to explain away those stories as just mistaken good intentions, try this week's. Yes, we're going to rehire the bat virus guy with even more taxpayer money to make sure that we don't have any more bat virus problems in the future. Recall the name Peter Daszak, the president of EcoHealth Alliance, the New York nonprofit that received millions in federal funding and subcontracted with the Wuhan Institute of Virology to meddle with bat viruses in very important experiments that somehow had nothing to do with the release of a particular bat virus from that exact location immediately after the project. We're rewarding that guy not just with more money, but with more money for the exact same purpose. As Senator Joni Ernst described last month, trying to stop any more of this funding in the future, this is like paying a suspected arsonist to conduct fire safety inspections. A fair description, but she's probably underselling the absurdity and the danger, actually. At least the arsonist is presumably suspected for just a few pieces of property. In the context of Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance, if what is suspected of them is true, they effectively burned the entire country down. So in recognition of the occasion, let's take a stroll down memory lane and remember not just the role that Daszak and EcoHealth had in this theory of the virus's origin, but what they did to try to ensure that you never even considered that theory in the first place. Because that's how all of this unraveled. It wasn't just following the money. It was Daszak and EcoHealth's public outspokenness of denial that, ironically, attracted some critical attention their way. EcoHealth Alliance is a New York-based nonprofit pandemic research organization, and British zoologist Peter Daszak is the company president. In 2014, Daszak and EcoHealth were awarded a multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract from the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Yes, from Fauci himself, to study the emergence of coronaviruses of bat origin. And about a sixth of that money, over $600,000 in that grant, EcoHealth subcontracted to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the exact site where the virus would later emerge. And that's significant not just because it's a plausible explanation for the virus's origin, but because it may have been a circumvention of federal regulation at the time. In 2014, when this grant was made and the project began, federal funding for what's called gain-of-function research, or the manipulation of animal viruses to infect humans, or just the artificial manipulation of virus transmissibility and virulence in general, was banned. And we could speculate that EcoHealth and the Wuhan lab just did it anyway, or we could listen to the grant maker, the National Institutes of Health, saying that it happened. Last year, the NIH's deputy director said in a letter to Congress, yeah, EcoHealth used the NIH grant money to infect humanized mice with modified bat coronaviruses just to see what would happen. And what happened could very well be the ruination of your life and everyone else's on the globe, if not for the virus itself, for the tyrannical reaction to it, for which we are still paying every single day. But I do say and emphasize could be deliberately. There is certainly a damning set of circumstances here that creates a very justified suspicion, but everyone is entitled to a presumption of innocence and his metaphorical day in court. But the problem for Daszak and EcoHealth is they haven't just argued for their innocence, which they're perfectly entitled to do. Much like they're in the business of meddling with bat viruses, they have meddled with public opinion and any effort at finding the truth, too. Recall in the release of Fauci's emails by FOIA request in June of last year, Peter Daszak personally thanked Fauci for doing his part to discredit any lab leak theory for the virus. The scientific evidence supports a natural origin from bat to human, Daszak wrote. But a year and a half later, we're all still waiting for that conclusive scientific evidence, even just the animals this virus supposedly came from. They remain unidentified and at large. That email came after Daszak published a letter in the medical journal The Lancet strongly condemning conspiracy theories that the virus does not have a natural origin. But why is a theory itself to be condemned rather than just debated? From a scientific perspective, the origin of the virus has yet to be demonstrated. Therefore, all possible theories of that origin should be explored thoroughly. Why would thorough investigation be condemned by supposed intellectuals? And it didn't stop at the condemnation or vilification either. According to some, the letter was part of a broader, outright bullying effort, a piece of propaganda to justify thuggery and intimidation across scientific and medical professions and academic settings. The purpose of the letter was to create a media narrative and establish justification for the ostracism or even punishment of those with dissenting viewpoints. Well, maybe it just seemed that way, we might think. To be fair, I don't see any evidence that Daszak personally tried to get anybody fired or expelled, so maybe he was just vigorously defending himself and his business, as he's perfectly entitled to do, even if he may have taken it a little too far. I am certainly sympathetic with the right to defend yourself, but I'm less sympathetic with openly describing how you plausibly committed the crime. Here is Daszak in 2016 explaining EcoHealth's work, otherwise known as exactly how all the discredited conspiracy theorists say he did it.
We're only looking at viral families that include those that have got into people from animals. So we narrow it down straight away. Then when you get a sequence of a virus and it looks like a relative of a known nasty pathogen, just like we did with SARS, we found other coronaviruses in bats, a whole host of them. Some of them looked very similar to SARS. So we sequenced the spike protein, the protein that attaches to cells. You create pseudoparticles, you insert the spike proteins from those viruses, see if they bind to human cells. And each step of this, you move closer and closer to this virus could really become pathogenic in people.
Is it a conspiracy theory if I'm just listening to you talk? How about if I listen to your fellow company executives talk? Dr. Andrew Huff is a former EcoHealth vice president. He has a new book coming out in November called What Happened in Wuhan that will likely have more detailed information. But he alleges that yes, EcoHealth didn't just work on bat coronaviruses and gain of function to transmit to humans in general. Huff says EcoHealth, quote, developed SARS-CoV-2 itself. But even if you want to think that doctor is just a quack trying to make a buck, even if you want to think that Daszak is just defending himself from unfair public defamation, even if you want to think it was purely a work of hypothetical fiction when he told us all on C-SPAN exactly how he did this, if somehow he did, in this context, we don't have to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. It should be easy to agree. Maybe this guy did some stuff, maybe he didn't, but there's enough here to say, let's not give him any more taxpayer money. This is why I say they are laughing at us. It's not just rewarding this guy with more taxpayer money at a time when your taxpayer money is being siphoned at the gas station and the grocery store and much more pressing necessities anyhow. It's the stated reason why we are doing this. We are giving Daszak more of your money to keep you safe from the bat viruses. That is the actual premise of this new research. Same as the old research. It is over $650,000 in NIH funding for research that started September 21st and will extend for 5 years until September 2027. The project, titled Analyzing the Potential for Future Bat Coronavirus Emergence in Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam. Yes, the emergence of a bat coronavirus would be a very dangerous thing, the grant's public relevance statement says. That's why we're hiring Peter Daszak and EcoHealth to study it again. to mitigate the risk of such a catastrophe. They actually have the balls to say that the important purpose of this project is to understand the spillover of bat coronaviruses to humans, doubling down on the natural wildlife origin theory of COVID-19. In fact, they say this new research may have an added benefit of helping us find COVID-19's true origin. OJ is going to find the real killer, and Peter Daszak is going to find the real bat. The only difference is that at least OJ has the courtesy to do that search on his own dime. And that's the thing about this supposedly crucial work. If it's so crucial, why do we have to be robbed from to do it? Why can't EcoHealth as a business stand on its own? Why is the company's entire revenue stream taken from us at gunpoint? EcoHealth has received tens of millions of dollars from the federal government over the last decade, accounting for an astonishing 92% of the company's total revenues, at least in 2018. They don't exist as a company without compulsory public subsidy, and not only are they not providing any benefit in exchange, if the suspicions are correct, they actually destroyed the country in exchange. And even if you don't buy that theory, for all the love that EcoHealth has for federal funding, they sure don't extend that love to the federal rules that govern it if we can't agree on the virus's origin, if we can't agree on the principles of the integrity of the tax dollar, if we somehow can't agree that none of this has provided us with any benefit at all under even the best and most charitable of interpretations, can we at least agree that if you want the money, you gotta follow the rules? No, of course we can't. If the whole point is laughing at you, they can't get rid of the funniest parts. If EcoHealth in fact funded gain-of-function research prior to 2017, as they appear to have done, that would be a violation of the terms of the funding, but the violation of the rules goes much deeper than that. According to the NIH, EcoHealth failed to report the results of that possible gain-of-function research immediately, as required by the grant terms. And federal law requires that grant recipients disclose that their work was taxpayer funded in their public communications about the project. EcoHealth didn't do that. And in 2018 and 2019, crucial years considering they immediately preceded the viral outbreak, whoopsie, EcoHealth didn't file the required reports with the NIH. Didn't get around to it until 2 years later, actually. No reason was given. Maybe everybody got coronavirus and couldn't do the paperwork. And when called to appear before Congress and answer why not to these questions and several others, or even just answer these questions in written form, Daszak has repeatedly said no thank you, as though that obligation is only a matter of courtesy and not a matter of responsibility and accountability to the people who sign his checks. But of course, in this arrangement, even if we the people do fund these checks, we do not, in fact, sign them. The man who does sign them is you know who, but I did my due diligence just to make sure that I'm understanding this chain of command correctly. Is this a matter of specific congressional appropriation? No. Is there some sort of board at the NIH that makes these decisions? No. The decision of who gets grant money is solely made by the director of the awarding agency. In the case of this grant, as with the last grant, the awarding agency is the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the NIAID, and so the director with sole discretion to make the award is, of course, Anthony Fauci himself. But don't worry, even if you don't trust him, you can trust the Chinese scientists he works with and now will continue to on this new project.
In our experience with grantees, including Chinese grantees, they're very competent, trustworthy scientists. I'm not talking about anything else in China. I'm talking about the scientists that you would expect that they would abide by the conditions of the grant.
Even if you want to take all of this as some sort of well-intentioned accident, the question then is why are we repeating a well-intentioned accident again? And the only possible explanation is that it's no accident at all. It is intentional. And even if the infliction of a global pandemic was accidental, maybe they didn't intend the leak, personal enrichment is an ever-present intentional motivator. Peter Daszak is a much poorer man without Anthony Fauci. And Anthony Fauci is a much poorer man without a pile of unaccountable money shoveled to him from Congress every year. And emergency in their field of study has had an inflationary effect on those checks too. Fauci was already the highest paid government employee at nearly $500,000 a year. And what a shock, as all of us have suffered at his advice. He personally has done very well for himself. His net worth has nearly doubled since 2019, all while the wealth and buying power of the rest of us peasants is commonly something closer to cut in half. But hey, at least when the next bat virus hits, you'll be better prepared for it thanks to the funding of these people with extravagant salaries that most of us will never even sniff. That's what we're supposed to believe. In total denial of living through the last bat virus, that we also funded these people to prevent and manage. But all they prevented was prosperity. And all they managed was our ruin. And the president and most of Congress are perfectly content to cut the checks again for another encore of corruption. In hindsight, it seems inarguable that we'd all be better off if we never knew the names Peter Daszak and Anthony Fauci. And the only reason we do is because we pay their advertising bills. And all the rest of their bills too, actually. The solution to the danger isn't to study faraway bat viruses. The solution is to study the sort of corruption that makes you pay for such things by force, because the threat to us isn't deep in some Chinese bat cave. It's in plain sight in an even more diseased layer. Washington, D.C. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Gab. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.